All right, why don't we get started and rocking and rolling here? I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Sobriety date's April 8, 1989. Welcome to, I guess it's a part of the Way Out group, online and in person, Big Book Study Workshop of the Program of Recovery, put on by AA members to help new people to get through this and to maybe have a different experience. And who are you?
My name's Joanne. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and
Let it all out.
My sobriety date. No, let's not do. That's not the time or the place. My sobriety date is August 24th, 2014.
Awesome stuff. We're at some interesting place tonight. We asked people. We looked at 6 and 7 last week, and then we kind of asked people to do the homework, which probably nobody did, so we won't ask, right? But it sounds good, right? Because we're going to stop asking people. Huh? There we go. How's that? Did you catch the whole thing, or we need to start over again? We're good to go. Okay, so...
Are you okay?
Yep, we're good. So let's look at page 76. And then we kind of looked at, right after the fifth step, it says kind of wait an hour. We looked at 6 and 7 last week. It was well put together. It was kind of the design of this thing. And then it asked us, let's look at 8 and 9, right? Why would it ask us to look at 8 and 9? Because it doesn't want us rushing out to start doing amends. And then you hear people, I think it's poor sponsors. I don't know where the idea came from. Your people say, well, the steps are in order for a reason. Yeah, we read through 8 and 9. We look at 10. We engage in 11. And we're doing 12 as we clean up our past. And the first person to give us that indication of that formula was Bill in his story. When you look at Bill's story, what was the first thing he established? Was a relationship with a power greater than himself through this course of action, right? Something happened where he was to check his newfound thinking with the new God consciousness within, yes? Yep. Then the thought came to him that other people might benefit from this thing. He hasn't even left the hospital yet. Could you imagine if somebody was there, oh, no, you can't go help people or start step 11 yet till you do your amends? Well, then you're going out unsupervised, right? Like I remember... Before I understood this process, one of the times I was in and out going to make amends based on my own thinking. Anybody ever done that horror show? Right? And I tell you, most of the amends I was making was very beneficial to who? Me, right? I want to start with ex-girlfriends in case one take me back, right? And then we'll go with work because I need to find work, right? But got to be of service. Anyways, moving on. So as we read through this on page 77, it tells us what our real purpose is, and it's been the theme through the whole thing. What's been the theme through the whole thing, Joanne?
The whole point of this thing is to make a conscious contact with something greater than ourselves deep down within, right? And it's not about fixing ourselves with self, right? Like Tony was just explaining. And that moving through the amends process would be absolutely no different than any other principle we've gone through so far, right? So right through the step 4, right through the step 5, right through step 6 and 7, it's all focused on developing this relationship, making conscious contact with this power greater than ourselves. So step 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are no different, right?
So you hear people, they segment, like put the steps in segments. 4 to 9 is about the past. This to that is about the future and about the present. It's not about this. It's all encompassing. Like it takes away the compartmentalizing of the steps. It comes about this relationship. So on page 77, it talks about our real purpose
is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us.
To fit ourselves means involvement. Yes, means effort, means inconvenience, wouldn't it?
Might mean a little bit of discomfort. Might mean walking forward to do things that we don't necessarily want to do, right? When the alternative might be go and do something that's more comforting, more self-serving, right? Less full of fear, right? But we don't have to live this way anymore because we have a recipe, right? For moving forward and dealing with those things that might create fear, might create selfishness, self-centeredness. That makes sense? Yeah. So if our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us, do we have what we need in terms of principles in order to do that yet? Where did you get that idea? That we don't have what we need?
Because I haven't finished the full set of steps.
Possibly. But I just said, right, that we were given a recipe, right? So that we could make conscious contact with something greater than ourselves. So that we could look to it, right? To be the source of strength in order to move forward and do things that might be difficult or complicated or uncomfortable, right? So do we have what we need yet to move forward, to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and those around us?
Yes.
So do we have a new employer?
Yes.
Do we have a relationship with something greater than ourselves?
Yes.
Have we made conscious contact? Have we begun to have a spiritual experience? These are all, right, terms that were given to us as we went through all of the principles that 4, 5, 6, 7, right?
Right.
Now we need to show up to play the role he assigns. When does the assignment happen? In the here and now. So I need to find out how many people's had a job. So sometimes you got to say had or attempted, right? Well, when you show up for work, right? Anybody think about everything that you need to do at work, and then you go to work and you do none of that because the foreman says, do this, do this. You show up to work, right? The clock starts at 7 or whatever your shift starts, and then they give you the assignment for the day, right? Like I work in the movies, and I don't know what I'm going to do at any given time. I could be over on this set. I could be on that set. I could think, okay, I'm going to finish. Nope, I'm off to mission tomorrow, right? Going to do an install, or I'm off to here, or I'm off to Studio 1 or Studio 2. Who tells me that? Well, I'm not the producer. The producer says he wants these things done. Then the art director goes down the hill, right? And then the foreman tells the lead, and the lead tells me. I show up, and he says, Tony, you're over here. You're over here. So I have to be in communication with the lead, yes?
But in that moment, you have the option of arguing with the plan, resisting the plan, trying to redesign the plan, right? Or fitting yourself to be of maximum service by going along with the plan, right? Having conscious contact with the plan. Recognizing that the directions come from something other than you, right? And we have the principles that we need so far in order to understand that. But we need to go further, right?
So as we read through 9s, it gives us different ideas based on our own amends list. We got 8. Right, from our 4, yes? And some stuff we added in our 5, right? Oh, yeah, this amend, that amend. And maybe when we rested for an hour, there was some clarity on some stuff we left out. We added to the list, phoned our sponsor, or the person who heard our 5th, reiterated that. And so as we go through here, on page 83, they give us a summary of the conclusion of what they were talking about. So they talk about, yes, there's a long period. Yes, there's a long period. So these people talk about, oh, you can't start 10, 11 until you finish it, which is ludicrous. They don't understand the book, right? Because we look at 8 and 9. Have they said start anything? Right? So we're reading it. We're reading it the same day, not the same year.
And as we're looking at 8 and 9, and we're going through the pages 79, 80, 81, 82, leading up to 83, right? They're not saying this is how you go out. They're giving you their shared experience, right? This is what we experienced as a result of us going out and making amends. And as you're looking at your list, it gives sound advice, when frankness is demanded, if things are complicated, if other individuals may be hurt by making contact. It doesn't say run out and make this amends. It says here is our experience, right?
Yeah, don't go Shanghai people.
This is our past experience when we went out to make these amends, right? And it says that it was a long period of reconstruction.
We're going to back. We got to do the personality thing. We gotta like
that there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. And what Tony's saying is that there's sort of a bridge between having a look at 8 and 9 and living in step 11, right? And then going out to make these amends when we have all of the principles we need based in step 11.
Because if you don't have these principles, then you'll need a step 10 every day because you'll be in constant conflict with everybody. What are you still doing? Still looking at me? Oh, there's the problem. Right? Anyway, I had to say that. Go ahead.
A person who goes out, right, as they put it, leading by the chin, right, without all of the necessary principles, without conscious contact with this connection with something greater than ourselves, looks like page 82, right? The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says sobriety is enough. He is like the farmer who came up out of the cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. And to his wife he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't grand the wind stopped blowing."
Yeah, I got 2 weeks of sobriety. Now what's your problem? The last 15 years. It's again. You forgot to add again.
Or to go one step further into those interactions with people with a sense of entitlement, right? Like how many people here have struggled through weeks of sobriety? Struggled through them. Like how many people here have the shared experience that just staying sober for a few weeks was hard, right? Difficult, right? And you walk into these interactions with people who have had their relationships with you ruined as a result of your alcoholism, expecting and feeling entitled that you should be forgiven because of the struggle that you've just been through in your weeks of sobriety, right? That's what they're talking about. Like, what's your problem? I've been sober for 3 weeks. Can't you just get over it already? Right? We need to...
And let's start working on you. Because I found the answer now, and I see where my problem is. Let's start working on you.
Approach your amends with a list of Al-Anon meetings, because clearly they need to go and get some help, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, yes, there's a long.
Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. And what they're saying here is that, even if we can make it, to a place where we're through our inventory, we've completed our 5th step, we understand who's doing the work in step 6 and 7, right? We've gained enough willingness. We've made conscious contact with this new relationship with something greater than ourselves. The idea that we're going to be all the way through our amends in a couple of weeks is impractical. And the idea that we should wait until we are through all of our amends before we begin practicing step 11 could be fatal, right?
Because what's the most important part of the contingency of our sobriety? Our relationship with a power greater. And we've just begun to have a spiritual experience. We haven't had a total one yet. You may feel good, things are good, the idea of drinking may leave. I say to yourself, "Self, do you feel like drinking?" "No, I don't. I don't even think of it. The obsession is left." But we know enough now that's a state of it's not a state of delusion, but it's inaccurate to believe that I could see my thinking with my thinking.
It's
to keep me
unreasonable.
sober.
It's
unreasonable, right? Because we know this condition is beyond our ability to see. We could see the obsession, but that's in regards to being able to control and enjoy our drinking, right? Which is outlined on page 31, all the different methods. Once we smash that idea, then it goes into whether we have the characteristic of being able to keep ourselves sober or not, right? So we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse. When you see you have that characteristic of this phenomenon, of the inability to keep yourself sober no matter what the necessity or wish, then we see our sobriety is contingent on our relationship. That's the most important part here, right? So it's giving us the recipe on how to fulfill that, right? So going on with this kind of outlines that, right?
Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it. How do we see it differently now? Post step 4, post step 5, right? We've set this matter straight where? In our inventory and our 5th step. Where were we willing to set these matters straight when we did our step 4 and our step 5? Within, right? So as a result of that, we now see these things differently.
We have a different view. Right now we know what was driving us, why we're resentful, and how come we're resentful, why we have these fears, what created the harms, where I didn't have that insight beforehand. So I see the 10% of my story that caused the 90%, where I was blind to it before, right?
Being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible.
So what defects might be glaring in them? How about resentment? How about fear?
Because we're not talking about alcoholism, right? We're talking about the human condition, which can be present in anyone we come in contact with, especially with those with whom we've been resentful, right?
Anybody notice people are really not as happy about your sobriety as you are? Some people are still a little, and so we'll get into it in a second. Okay, go ahead.
Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning a meditation.
What step is that? Step 11. So it's already telling us that we should be engaged in 11. That way we're not left unsupervised when dealing with these people. Because what's our problem? Lack of power. And if we don't get access to the power, then who shows up? You show up, the guy or the person that you wrote about in your 4-step. Because your 4-step is how your life looks absent of a spiritual connection, yes?
Yeah.
When you're instinct driven. So it's very easy for you to show up again. Anybody ever notice that? When you become instinct based again, who you being driven by? You. Right? So you need to be able to put a clutch in there so you're not reactive or responsive, and you get the pause happening as we learned in the 4-step that we're going to continue later. Okay?
Some of us need a twin clutch.
Twin clutch.
Sorry. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love.
And that goes into restraint of tongue. Like sometimes not everybody's entitled to what you think. How many people find that surprising? Hey, how many people are really hard on the people around us? Right now that we know. And then how many people are still pointing fingers because of you, look at me. It happens. That's that step 6 stuff, right? That how many people still got the grouch and the brainstorm happening up there? Even though you smile and say, oh, you know, I love you. But inside is like, I'm going to kick your ass. Just keep reading, lady.
The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. How do we live this spiritual life? Do we live it based on what we hear in meetings and the plan we design for ourselves? No, it's interesting that statement is in italics, right? Like, remember at the beginning of the book that any kind of important point they wish to make, they're going to put it in italics, right? Which means just a bit of a different font. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it.
And they're expanding on what they already taught us. The building blocks, right? Fear, page 68. Perhaps there's a better way. We think so. If we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting, relying upon God. So I need to find a recipe on how to cultivate that. Does that kind of make sense? I got the job through the application. I got the job, but I'm not in the union yet. I got to go through the probationary period. But I have the job, right? I got the job. I went through the interview. Everything's good. I'm ready to start work. I set the alarm clock. I'm ready to go to work. Does that kind of make sense? But I'm not in the union yet, right? There's a time period where I got to develop and cultivate this relation. Once I'm in the union, then I enter what they call a daily reprieve, right? I have a different thing governing me. Okay, go ahead.
Do you want to go through the instructions?
Let's keep going here. This
Unless
is good.
one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. Does everybody understand what that means?
Yeah.
How many people in this room have arrived home with a new sense of spirituality on their mountaintop and decided that everybody they come in contact must be the beneficiary of their newfound knowledge. Usually the ones shaking their heads are the most guilty.
Oh, these poor people now that I've evolved. Right?
Is there any humility involved in that?
Oh, plenty.
Is anybody else other than Dylan thinking there's any humility involved in that? That's going in the recording.
I
man.
think the
Good
only
job.
thing I think the only thing that really saves from our halo turning into a noose is the horns that hold them up.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
It's what props it up. Oh, yeah. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. That's a really powerful sentence, right? You want to know who somebody really is? Pay attention to what they do.
So
Don't pay any attention to what it is that they say. And it's contagious, right? When your conduct is based in something spiritually principled, right? Without having to run around and tell everybody how spiritually principled you are.
Yeah.
Right?
and that's where a demonstration comes in. If I'm living these principles, love, kindness, tolerance, they talk about that in the spiritual appendix. The people around us will be more aware of the change than we are. Before we try to go around convincing people how much we changed, and they're saying, we're waiting, right? We see what you see, we'll let you know. Here they're saying they see it before we do, right? And so what happens is, this is kind of important, is the people around us will start experiencing the promise before we do. If you're experiencing it before the people around you, then it's another delusional state that you've created in your mind to believe you've accessed something that nobody else is experiencing but you. If we are painstaking. So they're talking about the amends process, right? Have we started it yet? We're reading through it. We're looking at it, right? So you need to keep that in perspective of what they're talking about now. So they're saying, if we're painstaking about what?
What phase of our development? Is it just the amends process? I mean,
all the way up until then.
what we've kind of been discussing, right, is that these things are not compartmentalized, right? You start to notice that step 4 is not some sort of isolated thing I did and now it's done and I never look at it again. No, I went through a process. I have a different point of view of these things. I am closer to my Creator as a result, right? This is a principle that I will carry with me for the rest of my life, right? Provided I live this spiritual life, right? This is how I do it.
Because what's our real purpose now? To fit ourselves to be of maximum service, right? What's God's will for us? To play the role He assigns. So our job is to be present and absent of these things that block us off. If you're present and living in the moment, how happy are you? Usually you're pretty contented. But if you're worried about the future, arguing with people from your past, or worried about all these things that used to drive you, how happy are you? So you hear people say, I have an anxiety disorder. No, you have a thinking disorder driven by instinct, right? Okay, so if we're painstaking.
About this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through.
Halfway through. Halfway through what? This process, right? Of the application of all these principles to enable us to have this experience. We'll be amazed before we're halfway through this process. In the spiritual appendix, it talks about what usually takes place in a few months, not a few days, right? And a few months can seldom have been brought about by years of self-discipline. It's a spiritual transition, right? Okay.
We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. Our past experience can benefit somebody else now, right? As we're fitting ourselves to be of maximum service to God and those around us, right? Not just people in the fellowship, everyone around us, right? The girl you order your coffee from, the people that you work with all day, your kids, your spouse, your extended family, right? People in traffic. People that you won't even converse with, not verbally anyway, maybe by sign language for some of you, right?
Yeah.
Everybody you come in contact with is an opportunity to be of service.
The person in the 9-item checkout list with 10 items. That's ahead of you.
That's none of your business.
digging in their to get the right amount of change. You know?
Oh, now I need some lottery tickets. No. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change.
This is a continuation of the idea in step 3, the presentation of step 7, the reestablishing and the experience of all these things that we're starting to, that of the people that went before us. So they're saying here, this is a summary of what we experienced. Have we yet to experience that just starting to read it? No. So there's a period of time here that I need to go through this to start making right the things in the past. So if I'm making my amends, who really is going to start benefiting from this? Everyone around us. Because what we're doing is allowing them an opportunity for healing, to make right. Right? To be of service. So as you go demonstrate this thing, you go see this person you used to drink with, they wanted nothing to do, and you tell them what you're about to do, what you have to do. You pray before you go there, and as you go there, they see you're a totally different person. And then they go, well, I got my son here that could need help. Or they'll go, you know what, I know this person that used to be a real a-hole, and they seem to be doing really well. Maybe they can help you. Hey, do you mind? Is that a demonstration of what's available here? Because now we're representing something greater than ourselves, aren't we?
What would this whole thing look like if Ebby had shown up at Bill's door looking to be absolved of his own guilt and shame and remorse? Like, think about that for a moment, right? Like, something impactful happened in the doorway. He noticed something about his eyes. Something was very different about his friend, right? It was like he could see a light that was on inside of him that had not been present before. And if Ebby had shown up because he just, kind of wanted to get out of the money that he owed him, and he just really kind of wanted to be forgiven for the shitty things that he did, right? Would that connection have happened in that doorway? Like, that's a very different task Ebby was on, right? Than just arriving at Bill's house to sort of mumble, I'm sorry, and would you mind if I didn't pay you back the $200 that I owe you, right? Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us.
Will, not have. See, they're talking about potential, future experience. In the fear part, it says we're now on a different base. Here they're projecting into the future if we're painstaking about this phase of our development.
When we begin to live this way, right, and we begin to benefit as the result of living this way, we see, right, that through the process of step 11, all that we need is provided for us. All that we need is provided for us. Not necessarily all that we want, but all that we need. And as that happens, financial and economic insecurity begins to leave us. It's not something that happens in an instant, right? We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves.
Suddenly realize. To suddenly realize something means what? That it's been happening. Suddenly realize, like something different is governing my life now. I don't know when exactly this started to happen, but I have an inkling as I went through my 4, I did my 5. I was really unaware of the change until I became aware of it. I don't know how else to say that. Like, I was probably a year and a half sober when I realized I was in this relationship with this power that I was actually in with. It was actually something that was a part of me. And I was halfway through some of my major amends when I was coming back from Toronto. But I was engaged in what we're going to get into here in a second.
Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Okay, so are these the 9-step promises?
What's your first answer? Rather than not answering because you're worried that you're going to get the answer wrong. Like, get the answer wrong.
What do you
Right?
hear? What do you hear people saying? These are as a result of 9 steps, right? Wouldn't that be nice? If you could just do 9 steps and experience this, how many people would do 10, 11, and 12? If you could do the first 9 steps without 10, 11, and 12, when would you need to do 10, 11, and 12? Right? You wouldn't. So these ideas that we hear in the fellowship, nobody challenges the idea, right? It sounds good. It's catchphrase, bumper sticker, sobriety. That's I'll take 24 and I'll pass it around. You're like, oh, that's the. How about you pray for 24? How about some humility, right? And so they're saying. This is really cool here because they're saying is like when they talk about the psychic change in step 2 as the solution to step 1, and you read about the spiritual appendix in the back of the book, has it happened? In step 2, when you read about the spiritual experience and then you read the spiritual appendix, has it happened?
Have you experienced it?
But this is what you could expect going through this course of action. This is like what we're reading here now, right? Sorry, go ahead.
This thought brings us to step 10.
This thought. What does that mean, this thought? This is their experience. We're the reader. This thought brings us to step 10. That we could experience this. It's just like in step 3.
Well,
right?
more specifically, that we can experience these things that were just described, right? So it differentiates, right? We're not experiencing these things as a result of 9 steps, right? This thought is that these things will materialize if we work for them.
Because it would say this group of action. If that's what you're supposed to do, if you're supposed to do this group of action before going to 10, then it would say this group of action brings us now to step 10. Once having completed 8 and 9, now you can start 10. It doesn't say this thought. This thought. What? The foreman's talking to you. Says, hey, we got these benefits here. We got this, that, dental, all these other things. We got your travel package. We pay car allowance. We pay all these things. Wow. But it's only your first day. First, you got to get in the union. The benefit package. Wow, sounds nice. But you need to go through a period of time before the benefits kick in, yes? But when you hear the package, it sounds pretty nice, right? This package sounds nice, right? If you could just have the package without doing anything, how many people would like that idea? That's called social assistance. It's not a job. Sorry. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Move on, turn into a lynch mob. Okay.
This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along.
Continue. What does continue mean? Continue what? What we've been doing. It's not a year, 6 months, 5 months. We've done our 5, like the way it's designed. We've done our 5 a couple days ago. We've read through 6 and 7. We've read through 8 and 9. We'll say a couple days grace because, we're keeners, right? Yes? Mm-hmm. So if we're continuing, what are we continuing? The principles that we learned in 4, because we're learning how to master resentment, yes? We're learning how to outgrow fear, yes? We're learning how to bring our conduct into alignment with the ideas that we presented, yes? We're watching for harms, that we don't create more harms, yes? Pretty wild, right? So we continue what we've been doing. Is that a new instruction?
We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past.
Oh, what? Wait a minute.
We have entered the world of the spirit, full stop. So that is a summary of everything we've been talking about since this meeting started, right? The removal of the compartmentalizing of the steps, right? Here it starts to become a set of principles that we continue to live by as we clean up the wreckage of our past. Is that what it's saying here? Or is it saying, we've done this, check, we've done this, check, we don't need to look at these things again. Step 10 is a whole new idea, right? It doesn't say that at all, right? We have entered the world of the spirit. Right now, we're practicing the principles of inventory, right? of engaging in this relationship and understanding that once we acknowledge, a bit of self-reliance about ourselves, we ask for it to be removed. We don't continue working on it.
In a doctor's opinion, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message that can hold an interest these alcoholics must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideas must be grounded in a power greater than themselves, not in the application of 10, 11, and 12. Because a lot of people could do 10, 11, and 12 every day and not have a spiritual connection. They get into the mechanics of things.
Meaning, I'm going to take inventory. I'm going to notice that this is wrong about me. I'm going to adjust my behavior. I'm going to fix this. These are now my old behaviors. These are the new behaviors I'm going to replace them with, right? Does this all sound familiar? This is what you hear people share about in meetings, right? These are my old behaviors. These are my new behaviors. This is what I'm doing, right, to create a change in my life, right? And there's absolutely no mention of a spiritual connection whatsoever. That is the mechanics without the spiritual connection.
And so my friend, page 13, when Bill and Ebby were talking, my friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, that I would have the elements of a way of living. See that? Elements of a way of living, right? Which would answer all my problems. Belief in a, right? And it goes on, humility, blah, blah. So here they're talking about here, right? This way of living as we cleaned up the past. Does that kind of make sense? So I'm not engaged in anything yet. I'm getting ready to, right? So I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. So is there any new instructions there? Continue doing what you do. So if your foreman came up to you and said, hey, you've done great so far, continue doing that. You just continue doing what you're doing, right? And then you'd come up to you and go, hey, wait a minute. I got something else for you. That would be a new instruction, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay, and what's the new instruction?
Our next function, right? New sentence. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter.
Of what? Effectiveness of what? Well, it just said it. So when you read what it's saying, it says, we have entered the world of the Spirit. When did we enter this? Signify like the actual connection. When did it happen? We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. What step is that? 5. Because a lot of people start getting the connection in 4 and don't do the 5, and it doesn't complete the cycle, and talk about the warning of getting drunk because they haven't created any significant change.
Let's just be clear, right? We're not talking about the moment you started to feel better. Okay? We're talking about the moment that something started to provide for you what you could not provide for yourself. That does not necessarily coincide with angelic voices from the sky and, burning bushes and booming voices and just feeling like everything is just going your way, right? Feeling better and a spiritual experience are not necessarily the same thing, right? But the moment something started to provide for you what you could not provide for yourself, this was the beginning of the spiritual experience.
So we've entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function, right, is what?
Is to grow in understanding and effectiveness.
Of what? This relationship. Understanding and effectiveness of this relationship. If this relationship has all that I need, and it'll provide all that they talked about, right? If it's a new employer providing all that I need, so what's the only thing lacking is my understanding and connection to it. Right? I don't need to develop it. I need to develop me. So that don't need to be developed. My understanding and my connection to it is the problem.
And this is not necessarily the flick of a switch, right? It's not something that happens in an instant. They say here it's not an overnight matter. It should continue for your lifetime. So it's not a step a month. It's not a series of steps focused on yourself annually every year, right? It's a set of principles that are now fluid. They're not compartmentalized from one another. They work together, right, for the sole purpose of growing and understanding and effectiveness of this relationship with something greater than yourself, right? This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Where did we learn to do that initially? Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, right? We got a recipe in step 4 to acknowledge. We were provided with prayer and an idea on what to convey in that prayer, right? And then we were given action about going to help somebody.
Continue, right? To watch for it doesn't mean concentrate on. 2 different things. Yes. If we all went for a drive in my car and I say, hey, we're going to go for a nice drive, and then as we're going along, I say, watch out for bears, watch out for other cars, watch out. And I could tell about every single thing. How many people would have anxiety before we even got to home? Watch out for bottles, watch. That's not the purpose, right? We're going to go for a nice drive. Oh my God, you'd be like, oh. Right? So, but you know, you get what I'm saying? But if you go for a nice drive, like on the bike, or you're concentrated on the mountains and everything around you, but you're watching for these other things. You're being proactive. Oh, this guy has a signal. I'm going to slow down. Oh, there's an animal there. Okay, I'm going to be proactive. But I'm not going to be all anxiety-based watching like it's no fun for nobody. That's how we used to go through life, though.
That's how we look in our daily lives, right? Comparing our relationships, was it selfish or not? So we continue to look for that selfishness that we learned in that sex inventory, right? Looking for the dishonesty that shows up, resentments, fears, right? And when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them.
Here's the recipe we've been learning. Like, it's funny, when people talk about step 10, nobody talks about step 10. What they talk about is, a daily inventory. Does it say in daily inventory here?
No, as we move through the moments of our day, what are we doing? We're continuing, right? We're continuing, right, to look for selfishness, for dishonesty, for fear, right? So when you're driving home, and maybe you're arriving home later than you should, and you're already devising a plan, or you're devising a plan when you're late for work to lie about why you're late for work, right? You say, oh, that's interesting that I feel the need to lie about that, right? You're acknowledging what's happening because you're observing it. You're not participating in it. What do you do in that moment according to these instructions? Do you come up with a better lie? Yes. Do you double down, right? No, you're like, you have this relationship now. You are in conscious contact with something that's more powerful than you, right? Remove this. Direct my attention to what you would have me be in this moment.
Because if you have to do step 10 every day, there's something, you're missing something still. Like if you're still being driven by self, and you're totally apologetic to everybody you're running, I would say you missed something, right? Okay, so here's the recipe. That we remember when we looked at the 3rd step prayer, it was an overview, right? And then we learned the 4th step, and then we learned the 5th step, and then it's a summary of a recipe. Yes, my friend promised when these things were done, have the elements of way living. This is a summary that's outlined. It's a whole overview. Look at the wording here. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask who?
God.
To what?
At once to remove them.
Oh, it sounds like the 4-step fear prayer. When we recognize something, what does it ask? First thing we need to recognize something shifted. There's a change in my energy, right? There's an anxiety or something happening. There's a takeover of the mind and the chatter. The narrators got my attention, right? So I acknowledge that. I step back from it, and it asks me to do what? Pray. Right? Then what does it ask me to do?
We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. We learned that a solitary self-appraisal is often insufficient. Which step did we learn that in? Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code.
So it's not then go find someone to work with. Go find someone to help, be of service. So it's not asking you, like there's people out there who do a step 10 checklist every day about them. Not only am I going to do my whole list about me, I'm going to phone someone to talk about me. Like, it's still me. It's like it doesn't, if we've harmed anybody, Because as a human, anybody's still going to have a bit of flaws, fall short of the mark. Anybody other than Joanne, but I mean,
You, are we talking about you?
Yeah, no.
I mean, I got my own list about you.
We're not saints, right? But I come really close every day, and I wake up the next day, and then they move the line again, right? So it's like, oh my God, the goalpost is way over there. I was only like 5 yards away from it when I went to sleep last night. Oh my God, first down again. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned.
By what time? By the time I'm reading step 10? By this time, well, if you go back through what he was saying, this thought brings us to step 10. And before that, right, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. So they give us a timeline. And the spiritual appendix says what usually takes place in a few months. Here they're saying I need to incorporate all this phase of my development of what? Growing in understanding and effectiveness, cleaning up the past. And somewhere along the line, right, it didn't say I won't stand up for my, cease fighting. You know how we fight? Fighting.
Intuitively knew how to
Fighting.
handle situations.
Fighting. Yeah, when we lose our shit, people know it. Anybody? That's what they mean, fighting. Like where it changes everything about you and you're driven by these. They're saying, hey, you know what? This isn't right conduct. There's not being a doormat and standing up for yourself or being reiterate, no, that's not true, or right, watching your kids or whatever the situation may be, not allowing things to happen that are unacceptable because acceptance isn't the answer to all my problems.
Because living by principles, right, is not about is not about being apologetic and subservient all of the time. It's not about people pleasing, right? That would just be another form of some of our character defects, right? Going from combative about everything until agreeable about everything, right? It's not the conduct of others that's now dictating how we experience our lives. These principles in this relationship are now dictating how we experience our lives. And as a result, we don't have to fight anything anymore.
Like
right?
my neighbor, I don't fight my neighbor no more. Like, I mean, he was pissing all over the place. I just put up a fence. He pissed on the fence. I asked him not to piss on the fence anymore. They're all drunk over. I just leave them alone. When they start coming over my property, I just phone the bylaws or the police. I don't fight with them anymore. Like, I just don't engage because it's my peace of mind, my serenity. And what happens is, if your life still looks like, if you go to visit somebody like in a psych ward, family, and you get in an argument with somebody in the psych ward, you're arguing with a family member in the psych ward. Both of you are getting in, and they got to look on your feet to see who's wearing the slippers. Yeah. If your life still looks like that, there's a problem. Right? Who's the patient here? Right? The one with the slippers.
Stop telling stories about me.
But you know what I mean? Like, you know, a demonstration of these things, and it's hard. Like, we're not saints. And it's about progress. I only knocked out 2 teeth, not 4. Sorry, go ahead.
For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame.
Boy, this almost seems like another overview of what we could expect laid out by those that went before us. It seems like it's like a rest stop saying, okay, we've gotten here. We've just talked about the amends, right? Continue doing this. Let's look at the map again. Okay, our next function is we got to go down this road now. The GPS says I need to go down this road. Grow an understanding and effectiveness of my route to go to work and back. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, right? I need to figure out how to use this GPS and not my own sense of God prayer system. I need to get this all in order. And this is what I could expect as we go along. What the hell, lady?
Do you guys...
We cease fighting. Maybe not. I got a pen.
Do you guys map out where you're going to go, like how you're going to get there so that it'll give you the fastest route, even sometimes if you already know how to get there? Does anybody do that? Anybody argue with the route that the GPS gives you? And every time I do it, I'm like, this is what my relationship with God looks like, right? I'm like, I get the assignment, right? This is the route we're going to take, and and I'm like, are you sure? I think I might have a couple better ideas. Right?
Look, I'll start swearing at an answering machine. It says push one for more, talk to an operator, and I start swearing, operator, he's trying, So I mean, it's progress, right?
Okay. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally. Where do we get the idea that our relationship with alcohol was insane? Where we lacked sanity around our relationship with alcohol. Right, that was the step one experience, right? That our reaction at certain times, right? No matter how strong our willpower might be at other times, at certain times, right? We were unable to make a different choice about picking up that drink. And what they're saying here now is by the time we start to arrive into the practicing of these principles, into this level of the relationship, we react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically.
And what it means is, like, it doesn't matter where I go. I'm all right. Beforehand, it didn't matter where I went. I wasn't all right. Like when where I got sober through this process, like I was at my brother's place. All the bikes are lined up. There's pieces on right. There's, for those that understand it, there's plants to the ceiling. There's scales all over the place. And I slept on the floor. I had no place to go, so I slept on the floor. Right, and I remember dating this girl. She was still in treatment. I was working on it. No, I was young. I was 27. Come on. So, anyways, and she's seen everything. She was like, "Oh my God, triggered!" And I was like, "What? What's the matter?" Like, and I wasn't aware of her. Does that kind of make sense? Like she was. And I remember there was times in my sobriety I thought, I hope I never get locked in a liquor store that find me dead in the morning. I don't know. Am I the only one that had those thoughts? Maybe. And then if I got locked in a liquor store now, it wouldn't even be okay. Like, I don't know how to, it's not even.
It's not a proximity thing, right? Like the insanity of alcoholism sort of dictates that whether it's 20 feet away or 20 miles away, you will find that drink, right? And what they're saying here is that the sanity is now returned, right? Regardless of whether or not that drink is 20 feet or 20 miles away, we react sanely and normally. We now have a normal relationship as a result of this spiritual experience, this entire psychic change with alcohol. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that we find that this has happened automatically, not as a result of the teeth clenching, fist making grind of trying to make it through another day sober, right? We're not describing doing time in sobriety. They're describing, right, a freedom from something that was tantamount to slavery, right? We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality. That sounded really great to me in the beginning. I hadn't been in a position of neutrality about anything my whole life.
Step 2. The idea presented that this problem could be removed. What problem? The alcoholic mind. I still have the human stuff going on that I apply spiritual principles to. I still have the id, this narrator that talks shit to me all the time. Not as much anymore, because, I got rid of half of the committee when I did my 5. Some hang-arounds were still on Jack Nicholson's bus and we were going fishing, but I mean, we had the whole, that part, but I could see who was in the room before. Before it was a whole.
Everyone's going but Nurse Ratched?
That's right.
All right. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition.
So are we still dealing with alcoholism?
if we arrive and this is our experience, right? Sanity has returned. Are we still dealing with alcoholism?
No, because if we're still dealing with alcoholism, we're in danger of drinking. We haven't had a psychic change or spiritual experience.
The reality of step 1 is still a reality.
It's lying dormant. Right? Once a person has experienced a psychic change or spiritual experience, is step 1 their problem anymore? Right? That's what a daily reprieve is. Daily reprieve from what? From the life-death sentence that I was experiencing before I engaged in this way of life. What makes step 2 in this way of life look so appealing is the death sentence that is waiting for me in step 1, yes?
Yeah.
Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities.
What day?
Every day.
How do we do that?
Step 1.
How does somebody carry the vision of God's will into all of their activities? That just sounds like crazy making a little bit.
Well, I turned it all over in 3, and nothing happens by mistake. Everything happens in God's will for a reason, so I'm just waiting to see what happens.
Do I act selfish and dishonest towards all those I come in contact with 23 hours a day, except for the hour that I come to a meeting and avail everybody of my excellent 5-minute share?
You've never shared 5 minutes.
Ever. Guilty as charged.
You did learn some things from me, okay.
I'm glad that you're getting involved.
Yeah.
How can I best, every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. Does it stand to reason that perhaps the next set of instructions we're about to receive is going to tell us precisely how to do that?
And who's telling us that? Them, in their experience. They're saying, hey, you're headed for trouble if you don't maintain and develop this thing. What's our next function? To grow an understanding and effectiveness of what? Of this relationship that we got connection to. That we just got the job. We're showing up to the job with the lunch kit. Right? Like, clocks hit 7, we're showing up for duty. Right? We're getting involved. Yes? I don't know what's going on. You don't have to. You'll be told shortly. I don't really believe in God anymore. It doesn't matter. You'll be contacted shortly. Just keep moving forward.
An agent will be with you momentarily.
An agent will be with you shortly. That's right.
Please press 1.
That's right.
These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. What does will mean? I hear this term a lot. I took my will back. That's, I had a terrible day. I don't know what's wrong with me. I took my will back. What does will mean? Yeah, your thinking, your thought life, right?
It's always yours. You can never give it up.
Your will is either spiritually driven or it's instinct driven, right? We learned that in the 4th step, right? We know what that looks like because we took inventory of it. Our whole life has been shot through with it, right? We know what it looks like. Now we have a recipe for when it happens. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will.
So now they're saying, here you go. Now the bit of sanity, direction, right? You're not driven by all these things anymore. Basically, here's your will back. Now we're going to try to align it in your development, your own development, because it's really your greatest gift. Quit blaming God.
They are about to show us how to bring our thought life right in line with what God would have us be.
So here we go.
Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power.
Much has already been said about receiving these things. I need to get better access to it to grow an understanding and effectiveness. Because what I've gotten access to isn't enough to sustain me. It isn't. Right? Because this shift hasn't happened yet. I may feel different, but it actually hasn't happened yet.
If we have carefully followed directions,
biggest word in the book, if
we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital 6th sense. But we must go further, and that means more action.
But we must go further. Step 10 was this thought, right? Then they do a summary of the whole thing, where we're at, where we're going, what we need to continue to do based on their experience. It's an overview. It's a transition into the most important step in the book, which is 11. That's why it says, we're going to cheat here, when we retire at night. What night? The night after you finish your 6 and 7. that night, right? Now we have the instructions, we have the tap in, we have some form of connection. Now we're going to cultivate that. So this week, read how they do step 11.
Read
it.
the specific instructions, right, on how they brought their thought life in line with what God would have them be, right? That is the point of view of step 11.
And what are they hoping? Here's a hint. What are they hoping step 11 becomes, which is a summary of the whole course of action? Step 11 is the summary of everything we've done so far, of putting it into practical use. It's your PPE, personal protection
Protective
equipment.
Next Thursday, we're going to dedicate the whole meeting to step 11. It's that important. Okay?
So read it this
Don't
week.
miss it.
We have a 7 tradition. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. We're going to close with some outside help. What do we need for phenomenal life, Joanne?
God.
God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life.
May I do thy will always.
May the force be with you, live long and prosperous, and get ready to be amazed.